I want to welcome everybody and thank you for coming to the Dinner Dance themed event session. I would also like to welcome everyone joining us by live streaming today. Welcome, and we're so happy you could be with us. Themed events are comprised of galas, golf tournaments, chef events, wine events, fishing events. You name it, it falls in that category. Just about everything, honestly, with the exception of great strides and endurance events. In 2016, we had just over 200 events that netted nearly $37 million. So give yourselves a big hand. So today we want to share some ideas that can help you enhance your events, add that wow factor to your event, and really help you have some great accomplishments. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce my good friend and moderator, Sue Hook. Sue is a national trustee. She's a member of the Southern California Orange County Chapter's Board of Directors. She chaired the chapter's gala for a number of years, which has raised over $11.5 million, and she is involved in some way in almost every one of the chapter's events. Sue?
Thank you.
And I apologize, I'm losing my voice. I've been talking so much this weekend.
Thank you, Helen. Helen and I have conspired on many an event. You know how you get that little brainstorming going and it comes out all right. I'm honored to serve as a national trustee, and I'm also the president of the Guild in Orange County. I've been involved with the foundation over 50 years. When I was in high school, there was a little boy in our neighborhood who had CF, and so we started a club, and we called ourselves the Conquerettes, and we were going to conquer cystic fibrosis. So I'm happy to see that we're getting closer and closer all the time. So it's my pleasure and honor to volunteer and serve with the foundation. I'd like to introduce our panel for today. We have Lisa Hamburger. She's the co-chair of the Maryland Spring Swing, and Maren Blum. We'll clap for each person as we go along. And Maren Blum, she's the Associate Executive Director of the Maryland Chapter. Carrie Muchler, Senior Director of Development for the Maryland Chapter. Karen Sontag, Board Chair of the Texas Gulf Coast Chapter. Sissy Boyd, Executive Director of the Texas Gulf Coast Chapter. And then we have Peter Hodge, who many of you probably know. He's the National Annual Fund Chair and board member of the South Florida Chapter. After each presentation, we were going to give you time to ask questions, but I think we'll wait and leave that in the other breakouts that we've seen. We're going to hold the questions until the end after the presentations. But we'll have each of you at your tables have time to share some questions after we have the presentation, and then come back together and answer questions in that we have. So for those of you watching from home, you can submit your questions to us through the phone or the laptop. Oh, I'm supposed to be doing this too. Watch. There you go. So you can visit cff.cnf.io on your mobile device. You select this session and click Ask to draft or submit your question. And then it seems to have been working in all the other breakouts to present them for answers by our panel here. So, why don't we start with Lisa Hamburger, co-chair of the Maryland Spring Swing, and Maren Blum, Maryland's Associate Executive Director. They're going to explain how they've re-energized their Spring Swing event, taking it from a typical sit-down dinner and creating a new and exciting format in order to increase participation and revenue.
So I became involved with the foundation 25 years ago when my son Matthew was diagnosed at 8 weeks old. So, and Maren came aboard when I called her and said my son was diagnosed, and she ended up working for the foundation. Our Spring Swing event started really as a grassroots kind of event. It was small. We did a 70s theme, And we grew it over the years to over 600 people, and it overtook our gala. So this became our premier event. But with the success, you know, we've been asked to change at the behest of our title sponsor. And what could we do to, you know, give it a little more wow? So this year we decided to have an entertainer, and we moved from the gala format of sit-down dinner to a theater in downtown Baltimore, and we brought in a fabulous entertainer. And do you want to talk about?
Sure, and just to piggyback a little bit on what Lisa said, the event was doing beautifully. Our Bid for a Cure was raising over $150,000. We had sponsors. We consistently had over 500 people coming, and it was making a ton of money. So when our title sponsor came to us and said, you know, I think we're really ready for a refresh, it's very difficult, as we all know, to take something that's doing so well and to really turn it around into something unknown and hope for something better. And we did that, and we had a little bit of a quandary on what type of entertainer do you get that can entertain anyone from their 20s into their 70s and beyond, that everyone would think would be funny, that your title sponsor in this case, which is a bank, would not find inappropriate for the clients that they sell sponsors to. We have a very diverse crowd that comes. You wanted to make sure you could not only keep people entertained, but especially in this volatile climate, you wanted to make sure it was non-offensive. And we have this fabulous historic theater in Baltimore. We changed up the format as well. It used to be a seated dinner, and we changed it up to a dinner reception. So in our pre-function space, we did a dinner reception, past hors d'oeuvres as well as food stations. And when we went into the theater, we had our sponsor thank you. We did our we're very fortunate to live near the national office, and Dr. Boyle was our speaker, and he came and he spoke on behalf of the new science that's happening. And then we have a fabulous bid speaker, someone that is very interesting to our event, that has been speaking for the past 8 years. And Lisa will tell you that there are many people who come to support Lisa's family, but they also come to hear how our bid speaker is doing. And we've gone from her being in high school and college and to her challenges all the way through. She had a lung transplant last June, and it just so happens that she was called for her set of lungs the night before last year's event. So it took on an even greater significance. But that being told, we had a very significant bid, and we had a wonderful live auction. And the live auction that we sort of shook up this year, we had great experiences. We were trying to make everything almost a 180-degree turn. We did a golf with Justin Tucker, who, if there are any football fans out there, know that he was the #1 kicker in the NFL. We were able to sell that twice. We did golf with our MVP quarterback that we share with Northern New Jersey, but plays in Baltimore, Joe Flacco. We had a party on the Pride, which is the Pride of Baltimore, which is our ambassador, which you cannot normally rent. You were able to go, and the boat was able to go out. We did a Raven Suite. We were heavy on the sports. And then we had this, and again, it had done wonderfully well. Amazing when you move something from a dinner dance where there's a lot of chatter during the live auction. I don't know if anyone else has had that issue. It's very distracting. Silent. Absolutely silent. We utilized mobile bidding. That was something that we did also for Bid for a Cure, and I think that's something that we'll need to work on as an organization, how we capture people when they're maybe not used to doing a Bid for a Cure on their phone. I think they're very used to doing it for auction items now, but that's something that we need to work on as well. And this entertainer we had, which I would recommend to anyone in the room, he is from Florida. He's a comedian as well as a piano player. He entertained for 45 minutes. I will tell you, if anyone had to use him again, I would make sure that you have a stopwatch, because he went on about 10 minutes too long, which the people were hysterical, but for our logistical needs, we wanted them to have a little bit of time with the auction without being entertained, to sort of go back to that. So we're living and learning with this new format. But in the end, it was incredibly well received. And I have to tell you, from someone who was embracing the change because we had to, because our sponsor was not only a large monetary sponsor, but they were also actively engaged in soliciting other sponsors. So it wasn't as if it was a choice. It was something that they felt was very necessary. And it's a lot of trepidation, and it's a lot of planning to make sure that everything really goes as well as can be expected. And Lisa and I were on the phone many nights making sure, well, what did you think about this? And if we do this, what about that? But in the end, change is really great. And we created a whole theater aspect. We embraced the playbill. We are able to recognize our sponsors we had a screen in the theater, so we were able to do a lot of sponsor recognition as well. I will tell you, not only did it keep everyone quiet, but it kept our speakers to their allotted time. Standing in the wings, so to speak, you had a very efficient use of people going back and forth, so we kept our chatter to a minimum. And in the end, it was a really wonderful experience, so much so that there are a couple other events that we're doing a refresh on as well. And I think it's been embraced, and I think that we had a lot of goodwill to go further. Whether or not this ever becomes a situation where we would get an entertainer, a large musical group where you have the capacity to make a lot of money if you were able to sell out a theater. Of course, as we all know, it also costs a lot of money to have an entertainer. So when you weigh your expenses, it's a little bit tough to take. But creating that wow was not something that we had intended to do, but we wound up doing, and it was it's not as scary as you think. Anything that?
I mean, I know from my group of friends, and listen, they'll come for me, whatever we have, but they all said it was the best event that they had been to. So nice. I think we really are onto something. And we didn't even have an intermission, which we were a little bit worried about. Will people want, be able to sit for that long through the speeches and through the bids and through the entertainment? And there was nobody who needed to get up and go anywhere. They were thrilled about sitting there. But this entertainer is unbelievable. So, and he was truly captured by the cause as well. I think that was really from our speaker, and so
we would do it again.
Who was the entertainer?
His name is Sarge. He's based in Florida. Anyone knows him? He performs in California. He performs in...
He's in Las Vegas.
He's in Las Vegas.
He goes to New York. Yeah, so
He sounds wonderful. I think I'll add him to our Rolodex.
I think that's important to know. He was a good value.
Oh, good. Well, thank you, Lisa and Maren. We'll hold the questions until after, and we'll move along now to Carrie Muchler, Senior Director of Development of the Maryland chapter. And Carrie's going to talk about their chapter's passion for a food and wine event and how a theme can get excitement, interest, and intense revenue.
Okay. Hello. Excuse me. Passion for Food and Wine, it's coming into its 6th year, and we've been able to, actually, the very first year we did it, I don't know, we raised about $65,000, and we're closing in on about $385,000 now. And it's interesting, we've got 17 of the top chefs in Baltimore And I know 17 is sort of a bizarre number, but that's the most we can fit into the Four Seasons ballroom. So with the setup that we've got. And it's a very interactive dinner, about 220 guests, because there's 12 people at each of the tables. And the chefs are actually cooking tableside a 5-course tasting menu. And the very first year we had 10 chefs, and I asked and probably begged some of them. And now it's interesting, they all come and ask me to participate. So, and we've got a great community of chefs. We actually hit the scene at the right time in Baltimore because the food scene was just starting to evolve. So we are probably the premier food event. Well, we are actually, not probably, we are the premier food event in Baltimore, Maryland. And we're lucky because we've also got a lot of, the chefs are great. We've actually added 2 of them to our board of directors. And they do media, social media, TV, radio to promote the event. They connect with some of our CF ambassadors. This event is actually inside the Four Seasons. So we are obviously only allowed to have one person with cystic fibrosis at the event, and she is one of our co-chairs. She's also not. She's not she's sort of scared to speak in front, so she doesn't. So we do not have a bid speaker at this event. So one of the biggest way we make money besides the tables, which are $10,000 for 12 seats or $750 a ticket. And it's sold out. It's actually going to be September 14th this year, and it's basically sold out already. And it's weird. It's a lot of repeat people that will buy the tables. Sometimes they'll bring different people to the event, but the same 17 tables. I know who's going to buy them. I know when they're going to buy them, and they've all done it already. So one other thing is a lot of the committee for this is not CF family. Some of them are corporate people, some of them are people that love food, and some of them are people that love wine. And that was also one of the sort of wow things about this event. One of our co-chairs has a very deep wine cellar. So this dinner, the 5-course tasting menu, is paired with like incredibly fine wines from private cellars. So we've expanded on our wines a little bit more, so it's not only his cellar that we're raiding and depleting now. We've got some other people participating in the wine cellar, but they are extremely fine wines that you probably would not be maybe at a very wonderful restaurant. But a lot of these people are coming for the wines and the food. And because of that, as I said, we don't have a bid speaker. We are lucky enough because we're Maryland that Dr. Boyle came and spoke, very short period of time, did a little bit of medical update, and he's such a good speaker that it was perfect for what it was, because these are not families, so they don't want to get too much into the medical scenario. They like more the venture philanthropy because there's a lot of businessmen, so that's sort of what their vibe is. But the way that we are lucky, last year we did the live auction, raised $150,000 with 220 people in the room. So the experiences were really what did it for us. They were all one-of-a-kind experiences. In Maryland, there's a chef there who's actually up for being a James Beard finalist now, and she's probably the preeminent chef in Maryland. Her name's Cindy Wolf. And she has never participated in anything ever before. And last year, they came to me and asked to participate. So after I picked myself up off the floor, we were delighted to have her. And on top of that, she actually participated in the cocktail. She's very shy, as some chefs are. And she came to the cocktail reception, and she said to me, she goes, do you want me to meet some people? Would you like to move me through the crowd? And I did that. And her live auction item that she donated for us was dinner for 8 at her private home. She will cook with vegetables from her garden and wines from her private cellar. It went for $20,000 and in about 3 minutes. And I knew who I thought was going to buy it. And ironically, when I was moving her through the cocktail party, There was another person who's a CF dad and a big donor of ours, and he was very interested, and he was chatting with her. So I sort of thought maybe they would both get into the bidding war there. And I went and asked, she has a handler, as they all do, and asked, do you think Cindy will do 2? Because at that point she was prepping food, et cetera. And I said, or what do you think it would take for her to do 2? I said, we so appreciate her. Anyway, so Cindy said, if you think you could get to 20, I would do 2. So we got to 20 in literally 3 minutes. That was two 20,000s, boom. And then because of the enthusiasm brought by that, there's another chef, Brian Voltaggio. I'm not sure if you know him, but he was top chef. He was a top chef, and he's a very quiet guy. And he jumped on the stage when it was his live auction item, which his live auction item was he was going to cook for 12 people at their home. And he brings his staff, and we do that a lot. But when it's Brian Voltaggio, that's a whole nother level of cool. So, and the next thing I know, he got on the stage and started to explain what he was going to do at the people's house and what he was going to cook, and tried to get the people up bidding with our auctioneer. And he ended up going for $15,000, and then he did 2. So, but then we had other chefs that are wonderful chefs in Baltimore too. One of the chefs, because we do ask each of the chefs to either create a silent auction item or a live auction item. And honestly, lives are some big ticket items, but silents are just as important also. I mean, we have some wonderful things that we put in the silent, and our silent is not a quantity. It's more of a very small quality. There's probably 20, 25 silents, but none of them go for less than...
I bought one before it even went.
That's true. That's true. Lisa helped me along. She actually bought the first pitch. This was our one and only sports thing, but for her son Matthew's 25th birthday, he will be throwing out the first pitch at the Baltimore Orioles game. And then they have a Sky Suite, and they go to batting practice, and they go into the Masson TV truck. And so, yeah, she bought it. It was actually helped move the night along quickly. It was nice. But one of the chefs had a friend who's got a place in St. Martin, and they bought this auction item for $10,000. He flew down with his wife, and they stayed in another condo right on the beach, and this other couple and another friend were in the other condo. He cooked for them for 3 days, 2 meals a day. And I mean, but he went out, when I say he was out diving for like sea urchin and things like that, that's the kind of things that he cooked. And the people came back, they loved it. They already wanted to know if it was going to happen again. So the chefs in Maryland, and I think it probably goes for chefs everywhere, they have a sort of a friendly competition. And as the event has grown over the past 5 years, the first year we had 10 chefs, now we have 17. But the first year it was the chef came and a sous came. And so those two were cooking, and they kind of did their own thing, and they all kind of became friends. We have a green room for them. So they all go in their green room, and they have their drinks or their laughs and whatever. They used to set up at about 3 in the afternoon. Now they arrive at about 11 in the morning and literally spend the day until it's time for them to prep and get ready. No, they do.
They get in the mood.
They do that too. In the chef world, you're kind of either all in or you're totally don't drink at all. It seems to be two extremes for them. But so they have a friendly competition. I will tell you, starting maybe 3 years in, these chefs come now with 5 people. They have the chef, the sous, the somm comes because the wines are so wonderful, and their wines are paired way ahead of time. The somms are explaining the wines and the vintages, and so it actually, the whole dinner is super interactive with the chefs chatting, and if the chefs if they're busy cooking with the guests, and the somms are talking to the guests, and then it's interesting. The next thing that ends up happening is they all kind of look around the room because everyone wants to see what everyone else is cooking. Like the guests want to see what everyone else is eating, because they can cook anything they want for 5 courses. So some people might be having a dry aged steak over here, and someone else over here is having quail, or it just depends what the chefs are cooking. We do ask about food allergies and sensitivities, and we pass that along to the chefs. But the chefs actually go and start to take pictures and look at what the other chefs are doing. And so they, come from behind the table, and then they start to walk around, which makes it great because then they meet all the other guests. So now it actually there, and also I will say our guests have also become very supportive of the chef community and the chefs that are participating in our events. Like they go to their restaurants, they say, "Oh, I met you at the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, Passion for Food and Wine," which brings it all back to the chefs, because I do not the chefs. I don't pay for the chefs' food. They do their own food. We do have a relationship with Whole Foods. So they can go into Whole Foods and pick out a couple like veggies and things if they need that. Some chefs do it, some chefs don't. Which helps some of the smaller restaurants probably sustain and help them, economically. But most of the chefs take care of their own food, and they love it because it's, 5 courses for 12 people, and they can do anything they want, which is something you really can't do in your restaurant. Let's see. What else was I going to say? I think that's really about it. Our bid, as I said, isn't... our bid is not the best in the world at all. That's why we need to make the live be really incredible. The bid does get better every year, I will say that. And each year we try to change just a little something up. One year we took all the desserts off of the table and put them outside into a different area so everyone would socialize for the dessert part. I will say that didn't work very well because everyone left when they were supposed to be bidding on the auction items. So we lived and learned. We didn't do that anymore. But this year we're taking the silent auction and the cocktail reception to, at the top, very top of the Four Seasons, there's being built a brand new restaurant that will not even open till October or November. But we're going to have our silent auction and our cocktail reception in the top floor of the Four Seasons. So it's 30 floors up right in the harbor of Baltimore, in Harbor East in Baltimore, and it's a place that no one will have ever been or no one will have ever seen yet. So they'll be the first people in, which is kind of it was a very good selling point for getting the tables sold quickly. And that's really it. I mean, that being said, we actually started another event built off of this one. As I said, this is a $750, $10,000 ticket. We now have something, we call it Feastival, and it's more of a millennial, it'll be like, what are we calling them now? Tomorrow's Leaders type of thing. It's a $100 ticket, and instead of it being the chefs, the renowned chefs like Cindy Wolf and Brian Voltaggio, it's really the up-and-comers in Baltimore. It's craft beers, craft cocktails, and the really new kind of hip chefs. And it also works for me because now I'm meeting the new up-and-coming hip chefs for when they can sort of graduate into the Passion for Food and Wine world. I mean, actually, we used 2 of them last year for the cocktail reception, and they were a huge hit in Passion for Food and Wine. So that's that.
It sounds like you have it all in order. I love the idea that you're training the younger chefs to move along. That's wonderful, Carrie. Thank you. Let me just say again that if you want to ask any questions, just type in cff.cnf.io and do your questions that way.
We'll be passing the microphone around inside.
Okay, then we'll pass around a microphone here too. I'd like to now introduce Karen Sontag, the Texas Gulf Coast Board Chair, and Sissy Boyd, Texas Gulf Coast Executive Director. And Karen's going to share a fun and creative idea that can generate substantial revenue to an event. And Sissy's going to speak about fun and creative ideas that generate interest in their golf event and help it stand out from the rest.
Thank you. I've been involved in raising money for cystic fibrosis for a little over 16 years. My niece Natalie has cystic fibrosis. She's 18 now and getting ready to go to college, so it's all cool. But I'm here to talk about a unique live auction item that we raise a significant amount of money, and to me it's a no-brainer. Over the last 10 years, we've probably raised upwards of $1 million. And it's kind of become a trademark for our chapter. So what we do is gather a whole bunch of toys together, which you can see on the slide. And all these toys are ultimately donated to the cystic fibrosis floor at the Texas Children's Hospital. And it's in honor of the highest bidder of the live auction. So we do this for every live auction. Whenever we have a live auction event at one of our themed events or whatever, we do this item. So you can see all the toys on the stage. We leave them visible all evening. And of course, this auction item is the last auction item of the evening. And that's good for a number of reasons. One is people have had a lot to drink, which is really awesome. And because this obviously tugs at people's heartstrings. So it really helps to have a good auctioneer. We have one of our auctioneers' name is Shorty. Yes, he's Texan. His name's cool. And he reads the audience super, super well. So what he does is present the story of how when you have cystic fibrosis, you can't share toys. I mean, they can't touch the same toys, so the toys have to be easily cleanable. So we try and make sure we collect toys that are cleanable or buy them that easily cleanable. So we get toys for all ages, and again, the bigger, the better, the bolder, and the higher we stack them, the better off they are, and the cooler they look. So the auctioneer pumps up the whole thing about these CF kids, little kids, are confined to their hospital rooms, so it's really important that they have access to toys to make their hospital visit a comfortable one, a more comfortable one. Sometimes our staff, the CF staff, buys the toys. Sometimes the board donates the toys. But typically, you don't have to spend a lot of money on toys, somewhere between $500 and $1,000. Just this last weekend, we raised a remarkable $194,000 as part of this toy auction. So it is amazing. So it can go from, this ranges, that's on the high end, but it's awesome nonetheless. So a couple $1,000s to $194,000 in one live auction event. Again, it's all about the auctioneer kind of reading where to start, and Sissy will have a conversation with the auctioneer about, the audience, how much money the audience has, how drunk the audience is. Where to start the number. Does it start at $10,000? Does it start at $15,000? Whatever, however it goes, and then we work from there. And let's see what else. Also, there's different ways. It's kind of a on-the-fly thing. So sometimes, if you're not getting any response, you could say, "Okay, well, how about if every table donates $1,000?" So some of our events have however many, 200 people. So if you can get every table to donate $1,000, that's not chump change. So, and it gets a lot of enthusiasm in the whole place. At that point, it's not very silent in there, but it develops a lot of, people, momentum, let's say. Let's see, what else? Oh, and we also try and theme it. Okay, so if the event is around the holiday, we'll kind of theme it, obviously, around Santa coming and Christmas. And let me tell you, it really does. I've spent a lot of money on toys. Let me just put it that way. Not that I drink a lot or anything, but it does tug on my, my heartstrings. So let's see. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. Maybe one.
Yes. Oh, sorry.
Just one little addition, not to take any of Peter's thunder. We use this sometimes as almost like a bid for a cure, where we'll start the bidding high and go down in increments. And especially in events where we've not had much success with bid for a cure, people seem to buy into this toys going in their honor to the kids after the auctioneers explained about, them not using the common playrooms. And we actually have had the hospital say to us, stop, we have nowhere to store these toys. Keep them, please keep them for a while. So we do keep the hospital in toys, and people feel really good about it. We have one auctioneer who also says, this is the last item, and I'm going to ask you to do something I've never asked you to do before, and that is I want you to bid on something where you're not getting one thing except the good feeling of going home tonight and knowing that a child's stay in a hospital is going to be made more pleasant because of that. So I think that's all, and it's 100% tax deductible, which we do throw in. So
really, it's a no-brainer. It's super easy.
It is. It works great and has worked great for us for years.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I've got a great idea for you guys who have a golf tournament and need a little bit of wow factor to your golf tournament or starting a new one. I'm sure everybody online and everybody in this room lives in a city much like Houston where there are a gazillion golf tournaments a week. And we have struggled with golf tournaments. I was telling William earlier today, we do a great job of getting committees together for everything but a golf tournament. We just don't do that well. Until we didn't do that well. We do it great now. But about 6 years ago, I had a CF dad approach me, and he said, I want to do something for you, but the only thing I know how to do is throw a hell of a party, and I know how to throw a golf tournament. He said, and I want to combine the two. So we have the 65 Roses Golf Classic, which is a party on a golf course. It is not your tamped down, quiet, whispering golf tournament. As soon as you arrive, you're met with live music at registration and a lovely bar that might offer frozen screwdrivers and frozen homemade, God, what's the pink drink? I can't believe it. Our chairman just made 40 gallons of this. Oh my, sea breezes. And there's food, and as I
Sissy
said,
doesn't drink.
and I didn't at lunch, I promise. Even though my memory is shot. So that's how you're greeted. You're greeted by greeters and live music and festiveness. And then there are 4 party holes that are themed along the golf course. For instance, these are our general go-tos. One's a Mexican food hole. We're in Texas. You got to have 2 things. You got to have Mexican food and barbecue. Exactly. And so with the Mexican food, and all the food is donated by local restaurants or by somebody who's, again, we're in Texas, who's gone and killed a couple animals, and we might grill those. We are where we are.
Welcome to Texas.
Exactly. We're glad to have you here. So we'll have a Mexican food hole that will have a mariachi band, and we'll have margaritas. Another hole, we have got the most unique guy who comes out every year and fries catfish. Now, I'm originally from Mississippi, where catfish is king, and this is the best catfish I've ever had. He literally is out there with his recipe frying catfish, and this is kind of a cute aside. He is so popular on the whole that he is now donating. We have our dinner the night before, and he now donates a fish fry to our big board, and we sold 6 of them for 50 people each for $5,000. This is catfish, and he's just a delightful character, and he really knows how to fry catfish. That's at the Jimmy Buffett type hole. It's an island hole. We've got a Jimmy Buffett type band there, and the drink of that one I think is a sea breeze. Then we'll have a barbecue with a country western band, and beer at that one, and then the other one's kind of up for grabs, whoever we can get to donate. Now, the committee that supports this event is massive, and unusually so for a committee. Almost to a person are very active on this committee. It's an amazing group of people that produce this event, but I have to tell you, much like your fortunate event, we're sold out. We just had the event Monday of this week, and we're already sold out for next year, and we may be sold out for the next 10 years. And we have a seated dinner the night before. It's a cocktail dinner. It's at a private club, and we have an early evening. Mark Ginsky spoke on Sunday night and knocked it out of the ballpark for us. And we had a very successful live auction. We have a lot of sponsorship for the event, but there are people in line waiting to buy sponsorships at an obscene amount of money for this tournament. So we are very, very lucky. But even if you took a golf tournament that existed now and put one party hole on it to start, you would have something that is different than what everybody else is doing. There's nothing else like this in Houston. And as I say, there are a gazillion golf tournaments in Houston, and we've got a hook, and it's worked beautifully for us. So,
Yeah, I was just going to say, you've got to tell them how much we made.
well, I was trying to be modest.
Come on, really?
We met. Oh, yeah, I don't have to be modest. I'm home, right? We netted $1.4 million last weekend.
Yay!
Very good. There are a lot of generous people involved in this event who have a lot of financial resources and just love to share, and that's why it happens. And it's fun. It's a fun thing from beginning to end, and they do take the golf somewhat seriously. I mean, they want to have short play. I don't know how we have such short play with so much food. I mean, people are driving across the golf course to get to this food thing. And the biggest thing we had to deal with was we were supposed to have storms in Houston last Sunday. And everybody said, well, it's great. We're not going to have storms on Monday. But if they had been relegated to cart path, it would have tamped down on the food runs. So that was a big consideration. So, but if anybody has any questions later or after this, just all you have to do is shoot me an email.
Thank you, Sissy, and congratulations
Thank
again.
you.
How exciting.
We are very excited.
Whoops, wrong one. Nope, that's the right one. The next person I'd like to introduce, in some ways, doesn't need much of an introduction because I think around the country he's pretty well known. It's Peter Hodge, National Annual Fund Chair and Board Member of the South Florida Chapter. And Peter will explain the importance of including Bid for a Cure in all the events, regardless of the level.
Thank you, Sue. And Sissy, I live in Boca Raton, Florida, where we don't actually eat roadkill, but I think we might have to start doing that, judging by those numbers.
Any kind of draw.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and good afternoon, everybody watching from home as well. We're going to spend about the next 10, 15 minutes talking about the importance of adding a Bid for a Cure element into every program that you do out of your own chapters. And I know that for some people, the Bid for the Cure is a scary prospect. We have all been in rooms where we've been just incredibly anxious and terrified of crickets in the room. And we heard that a little earlier here, where the comment was scared to do a Bid for a Cure. But what I want to have come out of the next 10, 15 minutes here is every single one of you in this room leaving here believing that you can and you will do a bid yourself at some point in the next year. So why do bids? Well, I have a very easy answer for you for that. On average, when you add a bid into a program, any program, I don't care whether it's first year or established, it will do somewhere between 15 to 20% of your budget for that event. So think about that. If you've got a $100,000 goal, you will, on average, do somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 that would just be left on the table if you didn't do a bid. So that all adds up. It really does add up. The other interesting thing about bids as well is, I don't know who else here goes to other events outside of cystic fibrosis events, but if you do, you will find there is a bid at every single charity event. So people who come to your events, they expect it. It should be a part of the program. And for most people, it's an element that they want to see in the program because potentially that's how they're going to give their money. And I would also say as well that if you have, certainly in a young professional crowd who may not have seen these kind of things, it is a evolutionary part of the program as well. The first year you do it, some people might slightly be taken by surprise about it, but the second year they know it's coming, and by the third year it's a mature component of your overall program. So I think that's important to understand and learn as well if you haven't done it before, that you may not raise the $50,000 or $100,000 first time you do it, but if you keep doing it and you do it well, it will be an incredibly important part of your overall program. I also think as well, the bid can be the most meaningful component of any event you do. So there's two ways to look at bid, right? One is, oh my gosh, I'm terrified I'm going to have to ask people for money up here. Or you can turn it around and look at it completely the other way, which is, I am just about to give many people in this room the opportunity to spend the best money they've ever spent in their lives. And why wouldn't you want to give people that opportunity? And that's always how I think about it when I step up on stages. I'm just going to do the best for some people out there. And it's evident afterwards when you see a bid that's really well done, because people come up and they give you hugs and they thank you for allowing them to give you so much money. Isn't that just the best feeling in the world when that happens, right? And I want to touch on this point as well that, and in a few minutes here, we're actually going to do a bid. We're going to do a mock bid in the room, which is going to be a lot of fun. And I want to do this really to illustrate the point that every single one of you in the room can do it, and it's important that you actually learn how to do it. Now, I want to point out here, it does not involve having a British accent. While that helps, it's not the most important thing. And I have a great example in the room here. Noreen Tarletsky sitting down here at the front. And Noreen and Chris have Alex, who's 22 now, and they're from New Jersey. So about 3 years ago, Noreen kindly invited me up to come and do the bid at their golf tournament that they ran. It was the first time they'd ever added a bid into the program, and it was just amazing the generosity that came out of that event. So the next year, Noreen called me up and she says, hey, Peter, can you come back and do the bid for us again? I'm like, no, not going to do that. But I will teach you how to do the bid. So she hummed and hawed about it and worried about it quite a bit. But eventually, because she had no other choice, because I wasn't going, she had to do it herself. Now, I was just chatting with Noreen before we started here, and she was telling me that since then, and also I want to point out, Noreen is a 5th grade school teacher, right? As mild-mannered and pleasant as you could possibly meet. Somebody who would never in a million years, never in a million years, sure she is, Chris. Never in a million years would you think would be able to step up in front of hundreds of strangers and do that really difficult thing of just doing the bid and the ask. To date, Noreen's done almost 10 bids and has raised over $250,000 by doing the bid. So each and every one of you has the capacity to do this. So we're going to talk just for a couple of minutes about how a bid is structured. And there's really 5 components to the bid. The first component is you have to get the room quiet. We heard this as a comment earlier. So, especially where you've got a little bit of a rowdy room, the absolute worst thing you can do is to start when the room's not quiet. Now, there's 2 schools of thoughts on how to get a room quiet. One is to shout at people, and that doesn't work at all. The other is to have patience about it. And I can guarantee you that you can get any size room, no matter how rowdy it is, quiet in under a minute. And that's about the best minute that you can spend in teeing up this program. My personal way to do it is once I get on stage, I'll ask people to be quiet. If they're still rowdy, I will wait. You've got to have patience. 10 seconds seems like an eternity. So you wait a little bit, and then you ask the people who are listening to you to ask the people behind them, if they're still talking, to please pay attention. So I use a line something like, would you tell the people behind you who are still talking that the British guy up on stage would like to have a word with them? Right? And a couple of times of doing that, pretty soon the room will be quiet. And you have to wait for it to be absolutely still before you start. The next stage is, and in this scenario, we have a speaker, right? Maybe a young adult with CF or a child with CF who's going to do the mission moment. But a really important step after the room is quiet, if you are going to be doing the ask for money, you have to give yourself a certain amount of legitimacy about why you are the one who is going to be making the ask. So whatever your story is, right? I have 2 daughters who have cystic fibrosis. So I will take 1 minute, just say, hey, my name is Peter Hodge. I have 2 daughters who have cystic fibrosis. I would do anything to cure this disease for them. And tonight it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker to you and then introduce the speaker. Now, it's a short step, but it's really important because when I come to ask for money in about 5 minutes' time, they need to see me as somebody who's incredibly invested in this, not just as a guy with a microphone. So do not underestimate that step. Do not allow the MC to introduce the person who's going to be doing the mission moment. You have to do it because that's what gives you the credibility to make the ask. The mission moment itself, if you have a young adult or a child speaking, from a time perspective, you want to keep that to about 5 minutes. Any more than 5 minutes and you're going to lose the audience, you're going to lose the attention span. I know I have a short attention span, but at this point, people have been having a great night. You've got their attention now. Don't abuse it. So something that I've learned along the way is, if you're going to be doing the bid and you haven't seen the speaker speak before, sit down with them a couple of days before, go over their notes, go on what they're going to say, because possibly they've got a 20-minute speech out there and you need to work with them to tighten that up, get the message across much more in a much more shorter way. So you want a speech mission moment that's about 5 minutes, that's going to pull at the heartstrings and is really, hopefully at the end of that, the person who just gave that is going to get a standing ovation. And once you've got that standing ovation from a good speech, you've got everybody in your pocket. And now comes the ask, right? The room is primed to do this now. And we're going to do one in a moment here. I did also want to point out that from a timing perspective, it's critical when you do this as well, right? Because you want everybody to maybe have had a couple of glasses of wine, but not too much. You don't want people ready to leave because you've done it too late in the night. So there's a perfect time to do this where you've got the majority of the people still there. My preference is that you do this before a live auction, and I will tell you why I believe that, is because there will be people in the room who just want to give you money. And they think that maybe the only way to do that is to buy a week in a condo in Vail or a trip to wherever or something, because they think that's the only way that they can give you money. But if you give them the opportunity to give you those big donations beforehand, then somebody else is going to bid on the live auction package that actually wants something in return for that. So that's why I always favor doing this bid right before the live auction. So the last two components are actually doing the ask, making the ask, and then, of course, saying thank you to people at the end of that. So what we are going to do now, we're going to get in the mood here that we're all at a fantastic dinner event. Look at me up there. How cool is that? And I'm going to come up to the microphone there, Sue, and do this from here, okay?
Where's the wine?
Actually, there's a,
Oh.
well, Michael, if you want to have flexibility, there's one right there.
Shall I just do it from here? Yeah, okay, I'll just do this from here. All right, guys, everybody been having fun tonight? Who's had a few glasses of wine here? All right, I need you to get in the mood here, okay? So you've been here all night, you're all dressed up, you're looking great. You just heard this incredible story from a beautiful young girl who told you about the treatments that she does every day. You're completely touched by this moment now. You've given her a standing ovation, and now somebody's coming up to do the bid. And oh my goodness, you've got that feeling, that pit in your stomach, right? Oh my God, not the bid. This is going to be terrible. What if the crickets? What if nobody says anything, right? So I'm going to go through this as if it's a real bid. I'm going to show you how I do it, and there's a ton of lessons in here that we can ask questions about afterwards. All right, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, how incredible was that tonight? And now I would like to give you the opportunity to add tomorrow's that we've just talked about. And here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to start at a very reasonable number. I'm going to work my way down. If you would like to make a tax-free donation to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation and to add tomorrow's, simply raise your hand. One of our volunteers will come around, and we can all go home tonight knowing that we have changed the world. So once again, I'm going to start at a reasonable number and work my way down. Here we go. Who would like to make a donation for $1 million? Oh, one day I am going to get $1 million. I'm sure of this. All right, what about $25,000? Do I see $25,000 in the room? How about $15,000? Do I see $15,000 in the room? $15,000 right there. Sir, thank you so very, very much. That's incredibly generous of you. Thank you, sir. You know, I always say that giving is a lot like drinking. The more that do it, the better it is. Anybody else at $15,000? How about $10,000? Do I see $10,000? Right there. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. It's incredibly generous of you. $10,000? $10,000 over there. Thank you so very much, sir. Thank you. How about $5,000? Do I see $5,000? I've got hands going up there. I've got a hand at the back of the room over there. Oh my goodness, this is incredible. I got another hand at the back there and one there. Thank you so very, very much. How about $2,500? Do I see $2,500 here? We've got a hand over there at $2,500. Please keep your hands up so our volunteers can come around. Thank you, sir. How about, where were we? We were at $2,500. How about $1,500? Let's do $1,500. We've got a bunch of hands going up at $1,500 over here. Please keep them up so our volunteers can get around to you. Hey, before I get to the next level, I want to tell you that we have had an incredibly generous donor tonight who has offered to match up to $10,000 if we can get 10 donations at $1,000. So let me see if we can get 10 people at $1,000. We've got hands going up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6 at the back there. We just need 4 more. 7. We got 7. All those donations are worth $2,000 each. I need 1 more at $1,000 right there. Thank you, sir. Thank you so very much. That was incredible. That was $20,000 just then. Okay, how about $500? Do I see $500 in the room? So many hands going up at $500 back there. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much. Thank you right there. We've got another $500 there and 1 more at the back over there. This is amazing. You guys are so generous. How about $250? Do I see $250? Here, right at the back there, right at the back there. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much. All right, I am going to close this out at $100 or any other amount. If you would like to do $100 or any other amount, please put your hand up right now. Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you. Right at the back there. Wow, I think everybody's had their hands up here. Thank you so very much.
Peter,
yes, Chris.
I'd like to give you your first $1 million.
$1 million right here. Ladies and gentlemen, you have all been so incredibly generous tonight. And I would like to leave you with this thought, that on the day that we cure cystic fibrosis, and that day is coming, and it's coming soon, and on that day, each and every one of you can hold your loved ones tight and you can say, yeah, I did that. I cured cystic fibrosis. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. So that's how you do a bid, right? That's how you do a bid. So let's just take a couple of lessons from that. Actually, you know what? Is it okay if I ask some questions, or do you want to do it? Okay.
Because we're not going to break out into the table things. We'll just take questions from our group, and then we have some from online that we can take questions online.
Okay. All right. So let me just finish up. How did that make you feel, that bid? Great, right? Didn't that make you feel good? Right, so there are a couple of key things in there that I want you to take away. It was upbeat, right? It was timed. You don't want to spend any more than 4 or 5 minutes on doing this. You need to be able to work through the levels, but you need to be able to give people the opportunity to raise their hands. But it's a lot about the timing, right? You have to get the mood up. You have to make this a fun thing. You have to want people to put their hand up in the air at these different levels. I also think as well that you shouldn't hesitate to start with a number that you think you may not get, right? I started at $25,000 then. Nobody put their hand up at $25,000. That's okay, because what if somebody had, right? So it's okay to start with a little bit of a stretch goal. I came down through the numbers pretty good. I did that matching thing at $1,000, which is actually quite powerful. And certainly we've done that at a number of events, and it certainly works pretty well if some can give you the opportunity to double up like that. And the other thing I wanted to point out was when I got to the bottom of that, the $100 or any other amount, I didn't try to consume a lot of time going below that, because you hit this point where the return on the time gets out of whack. I don't want to spend 5 minutes of time trying to raise an additional $500 because it would sour the mood in the room, which at this point is fantastic, right? And now we're going to transition into the live auction, and everybody's pumped up, and we're going to make a ton more money. So I will tell you this. If you now feel like you want to go back to your dinner dance and you can do the ask, I'd be more than happy to coach you. Just give me a call. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Peter. That was exciting. And it was probably exciting out there to be putting up money that wasn't your own, too. You felt so generous. Thank you. Thank you.
Your mic's not on.
No.
No, it's not on. So there's one up here.
What about Peter's?
Oh, wait, here's one.
Oh, we put it up there.
Yours worked.
I wasn't using that one.
Can you hear me with this one?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that Sue and her committee always did a great job is that they almost always knew that they had an opening bid at a certain level. And generally, it was $25,000. So one year, Sue and I were meeting with the auctioneer, and he said, "Where do you want me to start?" And we said, $25,000. But if you want, why don't you say I'm going to start the bidding at $25,000? That is, unless somebody would like to start at a larger amount. And we sat there for a second and kind of cringed a little bit, and he was just about to move on. And a man who had never been to a CF event ever was so touched by the speaker, who I think was Stacy Matenko. He stood up and raised his hand and said, "I'd like to open up the bidding at $50,000. So you just never know. And your point about the mission moment is so true. I mean, that's key. So we have quite a few online questions, so we'll go through those first, and then we'll move around the room.
So the first question is for Maren. What were the challenges of mobile bidding for Bid for a Cure? Did you have the paper option?
We actually did have the paper option, and we did that for a number of reasons. First of all, we were concerned that some people might not be as electronically inclined. So we had it in our program journal, our acknowledgement journal, and we had it in a treat bag that we gave to everyone once they came into the theater. Our biggest challenge, however, was because you were sitting theater style and our theater did not have a center aisle, is that we had people positioned at the ends of the aisles to collect any papers. Not everyone gave their papers. So we knew we were in the back writing, oh, I've got 3 $5,000 bids, but maybe at the end of the evening there were only 2. So what we had to do is in our thank you note, obviously if we knew someone who would raise their hand but didn't give their paperwork, we called them, tell me again, would you like an invoice, you know, as well as we could at that point. But we also put in our thank you note that if there was an opportunity for you to do a bid and we did not collect it, please give us a call. And we've gotten emails and calls after that. But that was I think people are used to it for the auction. They're not quite as used to it during bid.
Okay. And another question for you, Maren. What was the revenue difference between Spring Fling and your gala? Where did you make up funds from the auction? And what other revenue streams did you have besides sponsorship?
We do a bid for a cure. We have an incredibly successful bid for a cure. As we spoke about, we followed this young woman from high school through her transplant. She's actually getting married next year, so she was engaged. So it's a wonderful arc that she's able to share with everyone. When we talked about gala, we had a gala that probably would net about 125 to 150, and Spring Swing at its highest point had net over 575. So at that point, that's when it eclipsed. We also were going into a time where people weren't as anxious to get dressed up to come to galas any longer. And before we went to the theater format, we had a different theme every year. So we often would dress towards the theme, and sometimes we would just dress in party attire. And we heard from many people that they appreciated the fact that they didn't have to go home and put on a tux.
Okay, thank you.
We also had a live auction and a silent auction, so we were able to incorporate all three.
Carrie, this question is for you. How did you advertise the festival event to millennials? Did you use any event promo websites?
Yes. The majority of the, well, actually, quite frankly, all of the advertising for Feastival is done social media-wise. Whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's blogs, whether it's the digital advertising, and we've got Baltimore Magazine in Maryland, so we have a barter deal with them for the digital advertising. We actually do not have, we did actually have one print ad, which did absolutely nothing, and I did it just because it came along with the digital, quite frankly. But the other way that we did it was the committee was made up of basically millennials, anywhere from 24 years old to 37, something like that, years old. So every Tuesday and Thursday, we would send, probably starting about 5 weeks before the event, we would send something out to them that they could then post about Feastival. So we just decided Tuesdays and Thursdays were the day we were going to kind of social media blitz Feastival. So that was, let's just say it was, 15 committee members, and they were reaching out to their individual social media networks. We also have, which I had met through Passion, a lot of food bloggers, and they've got big followings in Maryland. So the food bloggers, I actually have two of the food bloggers are on the committee with me for Feastival as well as Passion, but they will also, they also promoted Feastival on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they did little sidebars also. Sometimes they would interview some of the chefs, and they do special social media blitzes on their own.
Okay, thank you. And this message is for Karen and Sissy. Texas, you rock. Love the toy donation idea. Thank you. And Karen, a question for you. For the toy donation, do you have the winner drop off the toys or recognize them in a specific way?
Say again? We definitely recognize the donor, for sure.
We do. We actually, the staff takes them back to the office, often in 2 Tahoes when they're huge, and we coordinate with the hospital. It's very difficult to get anything into Texas Children's Hospital as part of the Texas Medical Center. So there's a lot of bureaucratic tape we have to go through. So we take that off the donor's back, and we do it. And often we have multiple donors, and the child life specialist at the hospital sends a thank you note on behalf of the kids to every donor for every toy delivery, as well as our normal thank yous.
That's beautiful. And how do you maximize your big board profit center?
How do we maximize it?
Yeah.
The big board? It's an interesting thing at this event. This event is amazingly supported by the friends and family of 2 families that have children with CF. And their friends and family donate a lot of the items, and a lot of them are personal. a week at someone's ranch or a dove hunting trip or something that you can't buy on the open market but that has a lot of appeal. So I think in that way we're able to get higher bids than we would if we were just auctioning off things that are typical in most of our other auctions. Do you think that answers the question? I'm not sure.
I think so. If not, they'll let us know.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So here's a question I'm not sure I understand. If you sell the toys for X number of dollars per table, do you prep the table guests, or is it all from the stage?
It is all from the stage. And actually, the first time this happened, it was an auctioneer who was very tightly committed to a lot of the people in the room. And it was, as our last auction item, he really kind of went off script, beautifully so, actually. And he had a feel for this room, and he said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He said, let me ask you what you want to do. I have an idea. There are 42 tables in this room. If every table committed to $1,000, and you can divide it up any which way you want, we could raise in quick order $42,000. And they erupted in a spontaneous standing ovation. The coolest thing about this is that this event, and I failed to mention this, is somewhat generational. They're the parents that have started this event, and a lot of their kids and friends of their daughter who has CF, her friends are now of an age that they come to events. A lot of the parents had bought tables and given them to the second generation. When we went to pick up, my staff went to pick up the pieces of paper that were committed to this, 90% of those kids who are younger than 30 years old said to us, do not go to my parents for this. We're going to do it ourselves. It was very, very neat. Wow. Yeah.
Okay, another question for you, Sissy. Any tips for working with a private golf club that is more rigid on allowing donated food and beverage onto the course?
Oh, boy, that's a tough one. That is
Sure
a tough
is.
one. We happen to have our two co-chair couples are both members of this club, and they bend over backwards to accommodate us to the extent of they let a Bahamian bartender come in and bartend at one of the holes one year. But, they are bending over backwards. And this is a massive, massive event for the club, I have to say. What they go through, it's the biggest event they do, and this is one of the premier clubs in Houston. That's a tough one. I'd have to say you have to change clubs.
Yeah, work through your personal connections.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because that's a massive issue. But if you've got a member who they want to please, that would certainly help. We couldn't go into another private course in Houston and do this. But we could, with a member, do some of it, if not all of it.
Okay, Peter, one for you. How do you use donation cards during a bid? Do you use them at all? What about the donors who want to give quietly?
Yeah, so there's a number of different ways that I've seen this done, and I'll tell you my preference at the end, actually. So down in our home chapter in Fort Lauderdale, we generally tend to use their hand in the air kind of approach, and then we have volunteers stationed in the room who will come around with a card that they fill out. I've also seen cards on the table as well for anonymous donations. I was just fortunate enough to do a Guys and Dolls event in Charlotte, and they did it with the number on the back of the program book, which were held up at the end of that, and that was really incredibly effective done that way. Now, I had to have a spotter because my eyesight's not that good, so you need someone with good eyesight in the room, and basically we had the MC shout out the numbers as people raised them up. And that was actually really, really powerful because we saw a lot of numbers go up. So I think you can do it for a way that works for you and for your event. There are different options. My preference right now is that one with the numbers because it was incredibly powerful, especially when you got to those sort of lower numbers where you might have 15 or 20 numbers up in the room, and it really inspires other people to give because you know what, they want their number up as well.
And what about for those people that would like to make a donation but want to do it quietly, anonymously? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we usually do put cards on the table as well. So that's I mean, that's an approach to do that.
You know,
So-
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, Yolan, go ahead, please.
Yeah, what I was going to say, you know, certainly another option is there are people that walk around that collect the bid cards and, you know, the bid donations, and you could certainly just raise your hand and take a card and not declare it at any level. Do you have an idea?
A lot of times at the end of an event, when people are checking out for silent auction items, if they haven't won anything or if they did not make a previous bid for the cure, for people to make the bid for the cure right then and there when you're checking out.
Yeah, and Yolan, I would also add to that point as well, is that quite often I do get people come up to me later in the evening with checks or cash, both happen, and they want to do that. So usually by that time of night, though, I'm the British guy in the bow tie, and that's how they find me, and they will make donations that way, I think, anonymously. Yeah.
So here's another question. Whoops. Here's another question for you, Peter. How do you interject, or have you ever had this happen to you, if a bid speaker becomes overly emotional or something unexpected happens during their speech? Have you had a situation like that come up, or any thoughts on that?
My goodness, you know, we've all been at these events, especially where you have young adults with CF telling their story, and they are almost, to a person, incredibly poised about it. I mean, the biggest problem is me when I've got to do my bid speech, and I'm the one blubbering like a little baby. And it's okay, right? Because the most powerful thing you can do is speak from the heart. And I always, when I talk to somebody beforehand, I'm like, it's okay, you know? And I think in the rare cases when somebody has really can't recompose themselves, a hug is absolutely the best thing. And that's all you need to do.
I had that situation at one of our galas, and it was the auctioneer, actually. And she got incredibly emotional. She was going way off script. People were looking at me like, get her off the stage. And I'm like going, yeah, but she's the auctioneer too. So it was a hug. I just kind of walked over, put my arms around her, but it was not a good situation.
And I was about to say, we oftentimes...
Mike Marin, we can't hear you.
Sorry. We oftentimes, the same person who speaks at our spring swing year after year, as her story became more, her health became more volatile, she became more emotional. And so we put our center director, which at that point was Dr. Boyle, and actually Lisa and her husband, we put on the stage sort of surrounding her while she gave her plea, because we knew that at some point she was going to need a little bit of support. So we had them nearby. So she wasn't up there by herself, and then we had to descend upon her.
And she did, because I had to go up and give her a hug.
So it's nice to also have them nearby, or her dad, or someone of comfort.
Thank you. Did you have a question? A comment?
I was going to say, one thing we've done in Tulsa, one thing we have done in Tulsa is that we've had a creative agency work with us, and we've created videos instead of doing the speeches. We found it works a lot better for time. This hasn't necessarily been in cystic fibrosis. In other areas, it works a lot better to keep that time really short and yet extremely effective, because you have somebody come in and do a video and you let them tell their whole story, and then have somebody come in and edit it and put it to some music that makes it 4 minutes, and it's really can be a lot more impactful than even a speech. And then you can share it on social media and put it on your website and a million other places.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, one year that we had tremendous success, we actually put little LCD TVs around where the cocktail reception was, and we were playing the CF Dream videos. And we had the volume down low enough that you physically had to pull yourself into the screen to hear it, so it wasn't a distraction. But that kind of stuff just keeps setting the tone prior to Brother Hodge gets up and goes for the kill.
James, can you share a story with us on bid that we had at one event?
Well, we actually had a new
Helen, can you give him the mic?
We had a new beer tasting event last year, and although I'm a proponent of Bid for a Cure, we were a little hesitant because just the nature of the event. There was no real program to it. It was a $50 ticket price. So, but we were like, okay, well, let's do it, because even if we did $2,500, that's more than we would have. And we had a $50,000 budget. The bid did $30,000, and a $5,000 bid came from a guy that was walking by, who was not even at the event and just heard the Bid for a Cure speaker, and he gave us a $5,000 bid.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that as well. I think it was Helen started off by saying, we've got $25,000 staged at the event, and that's fantastic. But I do plenty of events where I'll ask them beforehand, do you have anything in the crowd? And they'll be like, no, not that we know of. Right? But I can guarantee you every single event, whether it's a $50 ticket or a $500 ticket, will do 15 to 20% if you just make the ask. Every single event. If you're not doing a bid at your event today, whether it's a golf competition or a dinner dance or just drinking beer, you are missing out on that much money, 15 to 20%.
And I think the most important thing to remember is that you've got a lot of people that come with sponsors. It did not cost them any money to come to the event. And they may not win anything on, if you want to call it winning, on the silent auction or the live auction. So you're not giving them a chance to be generous and support what you're doing. You're literally leaving money on the table, which we just don't want to do.
Yeah.
We also sometimes pepper in between the levels with some facts. And that's a nice educational moment as well. Just one-liners.
Kathleen?
I've got a question for the Passion for Food and Wine event.
Hold on just one sec. There you go.
You now have chefs competing to participate, but how did you pull those chefs in the beginning? How did you start this?
That's a good question. Well, first of all, Baltimore's not a gigantic, it's not New York, so it's a different community there to begin with. But that being said, the chefs they're vested in the event with me. We have meetings. I have meetings with the chefs, probably 8 a year. We meet on Tuesdays at 2:00 because that's the time that chefs can meet. Tuesdays is usually their day. Monday and Tuesdays are usually their day off. If they're in at 2, we can be out by 4. They can be cooking dinner at their restaurants. But what I also did with them is I asked them what they wanted to do and who else they wanted to invite. When we got the original first 10, then we would start to meet, and they have great ideas. I mean, chefs are super creative. They're like artists in their own right. So they've got wonderful ideas about creating, about decor, now the dessert idea was theirs, and I bought that idea, and it was a mistake on my part, but we lived and learned. But no, they are in it with me. I mean, I have them all on text. They have me all on text. I go and they do a lot. Chefs also do a lot for, I don't know if you know it, No Kid Hungry, Share Our Strength, which makes total sense for a chef. So I periodically will go to their No Kid Hungry things also and support. So, and when I'm there, they're like, oh, thanks so much for coming. And, it's also the same with the guests that are supporting them. But I really think the thing is the meetings. We have meetings and they come. I mean, they all come to, if I have 8 meetings, if they each miss 1 meeting a year, that's a lot. And they all interact, they all participate. There's an agenda. They all give their ideas, and they disagree sometimes, and they go back and forth, but they're in the event. And the other issue is the green room.
To core. So you have
Yeah.
so
The other part is there's the green room helps a lot, I will say. They're in there, they're having fun. They're talking to each other, and it's the one time that they can get together. It's also, this event also is a Thursday night, just so you know. A lot of times the chef events are done on a Sunday night or a Monday night, and my co-chairs told me basically absolutely not. They would not do it because they didn't think they could get the corporate support or just the guests, period. So when I talked to the chefs about this, they were willing to take a Thursday night out of their restaurant and come and do it. We also have they've become our auctioneers now, but there are two sort of matriarch chefs, I guess I should say, in Baltimore who've been kind of known and renowned, not nationally at all, but in Maryland, in Baltimore, for years and years and years. They were two of my original chefs, and they are still participate. They do not cook anymore. They are the auctioneers. So they kind of were like the leaders of the gang to begin with. But really, it's just including them. They are a committee themselves. I have committee meetings with the chefs. They come.
I would say if I was going to start a chef's event in where's the county that Sue and I live in, I think what I would do is, in the top of my mind, I think there's a lot of competition because they all want to be the chef, the restaurant to go to. So Sue probably knows who I'm going to be thinking of. If I was going to start a chef's event, I would go to who I would think would be one of the most well-known chefs in the county, which would be Antonio Cagnolo. He's a very well-known, I call him the Wolfgang Puck of Orange County, but he knows everybody. And everybody wants to be better than Antonio. So if you could get somebody like him first, and then you just start building upon those people that you're asking, because the guy that's at South Coast Plaza down the street doesn't want Antonio to be getting better attention than him, and that his food is better. And I think you just start building upon that, and like you said, there comes a point that you don't have space for anymore because you've sold it out.
And how that's absolutely true. And how I got to Brian Voltaggio, who I guess was one of the famous chefs. I didn't ask Brian Voltaggio because I didn't really know Brian Voltaggio at that point. One of my chefs, while we were sitting at the meeting, and he had just opened a restaurant in Baltimore, we're like, God, should we, they said, what do you think about Brian Voltaggio? I'm like, well, guys, I don't know Brian Voltaggio. And one of the chefs said, oh, I just did another event in D.C. with him. He goes, let me text him right now. So he texted Brian Voltaggio and then hooked Brian Voltaggio and I up via text. And then he and I started the conversation, and then he came on board. And then Brian Voltaggio the next year helped me get another chef. So they kind of did that amongst themselves. Now, that goes both ways because it's interesting. There was one group of chefs, not to be named, but they didn't want to we kept asking, and the first year I asked, and they said yes, and then at the last minute they pulled out. And then the next year they just didn't answer, and they didn't participate. Well, the chefs took it a little bit personally, and they basically just said, well, bag it. We don't need them. And they said, we don't even want them to participate with us because they're not part of our culture, and they're not all in it with us. They did come around 2 years later because when everyone started wanting to be, they actually called me to participate, and I had to talk to the chefs a little. And I did. I talked to the chefs before I committed to this party that they were a little angry with over the past 2 years. And I spoke to them and I said, they reached out and they're interested, and what do you guys think? And they decided to let them in. But that being said, so that's kind of how they've become so vested in the event.
Well, we'll need to wrap up here pretty soon. Is there another question or two? Well, if not, I thank every one of you for coming and for what you do all year long. And I know, as experienced as I've been in galas and that, and I'm going, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a good idea. We need to do that. So that's what these sessions are for. So thank you all for coming.